Let's go to Ted Vav Mid Aleph and just remind. So we had the Yirchet Davar. They had the 18 things that that they took the vote and Beit Shammai beat out Beit Hillel. Right. We didn't go through the list of the entire 18. Right. But we went through about 10 of them.
Right.
And the part of the Gemara we haven't gotten to is the Gemara is going to try to figure out what's missing. How do you count? There's always the question: how do you count? How do you count 613? How do you count 10? How do you so forth? So, but in the interim, the Gemara has a discussion about whether Hillel and Shammai are really in place of Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, or the fact that there was the discussion about Yodayim, and whether, and says Beit Hillel is one of the things that Beit Shammai overpowered Beit Hillel, and the Gemara said, well, it looks like Hillel and Shammai maybe it's really they had the machloket, and they said no, Hillel and Shammai could not have been this because we have only 3 places where Hillel and Shammai actually argue. Okay. And the Gemara is now going to tell us what those 3 places are, exactly what they are. So this is Gufa on the 4th line. We actually had done the first about 5-6 lines. Gufa Amar Huna Begim Makamot Nechleku Hillel v'Shammai. That there are only 3 places that Hillel and Shammai argued in the entire Shas, or the entire Mishnayos, or the entire actually gamut of rabbinic literature. You'll see there may be a few more, but let's take that number for now. And when we go through 1, 2, 3 in a row, what exactly they are. So the first one is, and we had said this last time, is about how much challah, how much flour you need to have in terms of taking challah. So, Shammai Omer mikav challah, v'Hillel Omer mikabayim. So Hillel says, Shammai says 1 kav, Hillel says 2 kavs. V'chachamim Omer lo k'devrei zeh v'lo k'devrei zeh. No, it's not. There's a third opinion. Ela kav umechza chayiv b'challah. So it's really 1.5. It's like a halfway point between the 2 of them. Let's reach a compromise. Goodness, they are correct. By the way, it may have been a later. It may not be contemporary.
Right.
Correct. Okay. Mishegdilo hamidos, and then later the measurements changed and were enlarged. So amru chameshes revaim kemach hayavim bechala. So they said it's not really 1.5; it's really 1 1/4. Okay, so the measurements, what used to be equal to 1.5 is now 1 1/4. It's like the Canadian dollar. No, it's like different things that, like a foot becomes larger or smaller and so forth.
Do you know what a cub is? I'm just saying, Cicino says 2200 cubic centimeters. It's like
is that a lot? That's like a little over 2 liters, you say.
So the problem is we don't really know exactly what the shiurim are. We know shiurim l'chumah l'kula, right? So in order to take, I'm trying to think now, to take challah with a bracha is what, more than 4 pounds of flour.
I asked my wife when we got back home from the last ship, and she gave me the answer.
Did she? You remember it?
it's like 5. It's a bag, like 5 pounds, like a bag.
Right.
How much?
I think I'm not sure.
A bag of flour is like 2 pounds, I think.
A
No,
bag
2 kilos.
No, it's the big bag is 2 kilos.
2 kilo.
Right?
one bag like
Which
that.
is 5 pounds. The small bag is usually a 2-pound bag. Right. So.
It's like a 5 pound bag.
Right,
I'm
but
not sure though.
but then there's a shear that you take without taking the bracha, which is about 2.5 pounds of flour or something exactly. Okay, different shiurim. So but whatever it is, that's the machlokes, and so it's down. It's whatever it is, 1 1/4, which became 1 and how much should it become? 1 of 5 reviim, which is 1 1/4.
1 1/4, 5 quarters.
1 1/4. So 1.5 became 1 1/4.
Right.
So in other words, what used to be 1 1/2 is now 1
1
1/4
1/4.
because the weights became larger,
Right.
or the equivalency of the measurements, which are measurements of volume, really,
Right.
Not weight. That became a little bigger. So therefore, it took less of what the measurement was. Rabbi Yossi Omer, hey Peturim, hey Chamisha Peturim,
Right, sorry.
5 1 1/4 is
Right.
pater, 1 1/4 and a little more, right? So 1.25, maybe 1 and I don't know, 1 and a, how would that be? 1 and I don't know, 1.3 maybe.
Whatever.
Supposed to, okay. So that's chayavim. So that's the first machlokas of Hillel and Shammai, and that's the one we had done last time. Was about how much challah does one need for taking, how much bread flour does one need for taking challah? Okay,
The
that's
answer
number
was
one.
They didn't agree with either.
That was the machlokas. That's
And they-
machlokas.
right.
They didn't agree, and Chacham had a third shita.
Didn't
But the
agree
important
with
thing
either.
was that Shammai said A and Hillel said B.
Right,
This is one of the three, in other words.
right.
Okay.
On the basis of what are they arguing? Like, is it just,
Oh, you'd have to go back.
they have a tradition, they have Masorah, that that's the way? I mean, there's no pasuk that's gonna help you on something.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the machlokas is. I
The
mean,
reason for Shammai and Hillel's opinions are given by the Gemara Yerushalmi, quoted by Taisvus here,
yeah.
as stated above at the beginning of note 8. The minimum amount subject to challah is the size of a portion of manna, which was an omer. The
okay.
Torah states that an omer equals a tenth of an ephah. Now Hillel is of the opinion that a tenth of an ephah mentioned by the Torah means an external tenth, which in common usage is 1/9.
Oh, this is the external, internal.
Let's get into it.
Outside.
But they apparently did have, a piece svara.
But that's why, that's
A piece svara. They had differences, it seems
Right.
like.
External, internal, just so we understand what Jack is saying, just to do the concept, because the math gets a little complicated. If you have to add a quarter, right, on, let's say, a quarter, or let's say you have to add a fifth as a knas, so it really becomes an additional, is it a fifth of the price?
Right,
Right, so let's say it'd be 100, we have to pay 120,
right.
or is it really when you add 100 plus X equals 1 and a fifth?
Fifth, right.
Which
exactly.
really becomes
We've
a
had
quarter,
this
in other
before
words,
in another
correct. So in
area.
other words, so if it's 100 plus a fifth equals X, right? So we understand what it is. If it's 100 plus X equals 1 a fifth, then you actually have to kind of calculate it down. Did I figure it out correctly? So in other words, would it be therefore either 1/5 or would it be 1/20th?
Sure.
1/4. I'm sorry, 1/4.
Sure.
Correct? Do the example very quickly. If it's 100 and you're supposed to give a fifth, and it's from the original, right? Then it's 120.
Right.
If it's from the external, it's 125 because
Right.
it's 125.
Five.
It's 1 plus 4 more.
Is equals
right,
1/5,
four-
right.
right.
That's
It's a fifth
1.5.
of the sum.
Fifth of the sum,
Yeah,
correct?
fifth
Okay.
of the sum, exactly.
So that's the machlokas. So it relates to that, and therefore it relates to how much the biblical shiurim are. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Good.
So they were only disagreeing about how you measure things and not really the answer. They agreed on the answer.
Correct.
Had to be a fifth.
In other words, it's not a lumdish and machlokas. I guess it is a lumdish and
Yeah,
machlokas.
yeah,
A machlokas how to interpret what the pasuk is saying, practically speaking. Okay. Okay. So that's number one. Remember, we have to have three. Okay. V'idach. And number two is Hillel Omer. This is about when you fill up a mikveh, and the mikveh has to have 40 saw. Once you have a mikveh that has 40 saw of rainwater or natural water, then you can add additional water that is drawn water, and that's really what our mikvahs relate to. However, if you fill up drawn water before you have the 40 saw, it will disqualify the mikveh. So if you ever have to drain a mikveh, this is every mikvah's worst nightmare. You have a leak in the mikvah. And that happens. Not hasn't happened here. But the leak in the mikvah, you need then to drain everything down to the bottom, and then you need, of course, to figure out how to plug the leak and make like it's plugging a leak in a pool. And then you need to fill it again, but you need to fill it again with natural water before you add the additional water.
First 40 saw.
The first 40 saw, correct. You can't mix it up before and say, well, I'll put it afterwards when the rain starts to come and so forth. You have to start with it. Okay? So how much can make this ruin this? In other words, is it 1 drop? Does it have to be bone dry? So it's machlokas how much is. So Hillel Omer Malo Hin Maim She'uvim Poslim Mikvah. 1 hin of water will passel the mikvah if drawn water comes in before the 40 saw. And then he says, Shechayev Adam Lomer B'Lashon Rabo. And he says, I'm just, as a side point, I'm using the word Malo Hin Maim She'uvim, because this is exactly as my teachers taught it to me. Who are the teachers of Hillel? Shmaya Vavtalyon. Okay? They were Gerim. So the Rishonim explained that they had difficulty saying the hey, or differentiating the hey and the aleph. Okay, or it wasn't that clear. In other words, sometimes you see a person who's learned Hebrew later, it's hard for them to get the chaf and the chet, right? And in fact, now we Ashkenazim don't really make a difference between the chaf and the chet, and we don't make a real difference between the aleph, the ayin and the aleph. There really should be a difference. So that's the same thing that I guess Shmai Vavtalion had a difficulty in between aleph and a hey. I've heard sometimes people say sometimes Israelis say have a good ear, and they mean have a good year. Anyone ever hear that? No? Okay. But that's the same kind of difference between a Y, a Y, and an Aleph. They had a difference between Ein, an Aleph, and a Hey. So therefore, when Hillel wanted to say Hin Mayim, he wanted to say it's a full Hin of Mayim, because if you just said Hin Mayim, what may they make people hear it as? They may have heard the Shmai of Avtalion say it as in Mayim, no Mayim. So therefore, the Shmai of Avtalion said it below Hin to underscore what it is. Correct? There are all kinds of jokes we can probably make about mispronunciations, but you get the general thing. So this is a sidebar that Hillel simply puts in to say that he is saying the word Malo Hin, not just Hin, because that's the way his Rebbe used to say it.
Right.
Okay. By the way, it does not mean the Rishonim say that you have to say things wrong if your Rebbe said them wrong. Right? If your Rebbe has a lisp, you don't have to say it over with a lisp, right? But it means that because they had said it this way, so therefore he repeated this way because he wanted to show reverence to his Rebbeim.
Just so I can understand again what he's actually saying, we have the 40 sa and then he's adding a hin, or he's adding a hin just before there's 40
You put one hin of Mayim before you have the 40 in there.
So
Well, possibly, correct.
And you put in the one hin.
Correct,
So
okay.
39, let's say, and you put in a hin now.
How much was the hin?
How much is a hin? He says 12 lugim, says Rashi. How much is a lugim? I think Art School's got a chart somewhere.
Looks like a lug is...
6 by 8, 7.
But they didn't translate it into anything that I understood what it was. They translate into other obscure measurements, not obscure, usual measurements. Kav, revius.
Well, it's six beta. So
Okay.
Is one hin?
yeah, it is one lug.
One
I
lug.
imagine that
How
our
many
school
lugs
didn't want to
in a
get
hin?
excommunicated for choosing a side of how much a bail really is, but more or less. So
But how many lugs were there in a hin? What did he say?
Yeah. You said how many lugs were in a hin?
I said Rashi says 12 lugs.
12. So 12 times, that's 72 eggs.
That's quite a bit.
Okay, that's quite a bit. Okay, so in other words, it's not bone dry, but whatever it is, it could be a quart of water. Let's say, I don't know 72 eggs is. So this is what Hillel says,
Right.
and then Shammai says it's Tisha Kavim, it's 9 Kavim. How much is Kavim in relationship to a hin?
Well, one kav is 4 lug. So that's a third.
1 kav is 4 lug, and 9 lugim. No, 9 kavim is going to be 9 times 4, 36.
36 lugim as opposed to
36 lugim. The other one you said was what? 12 lugim.
12 lugim.
Okay. Okay. So it's much more.
I think
So that's a significant number. The Chachamim said, nah, it's neither one, but they don't say what it is. Until 2, I think these are weavers who happened to show up, okay, and apparently these were not necessarily Shara Ashba, who lived near Shara Ashba. Shara Ashba was not the most pleasant place to live. So it was not it was not Madison Avenue, it was not Park Avenue in the same. Right, it was not whatever it is where the high ploy lived. So these 2 schleppers came along, but they were weavers, and I guess whatever that's their profession. And I guess weavers also were not a high-paid class of individuals. Shibushalayim.
Weavers knew very well, have been precise with measurements.
I imagine any artisan was precise with measurements,
Yeah.
but you would think that they would be more precise with dry measure
Right, yeah.
than with liquid measure.
Correct.
So whatever it was. So why these people? So whatever. At any rate,
because they had a source.
right. So Rashi quotes and says that Ein lecha umanos pchusa migardi. that there is this is one of the lowest professions, like the untouchables in the Indian caste system. These people had such poor level of lack of aristocracy, they could never be appointed as the Kohen Gadol. Assuming they were Kohen, it could be a Melech, assuming they were coming from the house of Beis David. This was just, so to speak, the ends of society, and in fact that they were the worst place to live. The poorest slum was near Shara Ashba. So it's telling you that these people, it's just giving you a piece of history here to say that these are the people who are going to tell us what the halacha is. And it's not that they knew it. It's not that they professionally knew it, but look, they knew it because they heard it from Shmai Vavtan. They come to kind of tell it over from Shmai Vavtan. So they came along to say, we heard Shmai Vavtan say it, and he didn't talk about 12 lugim, and he didn't talk about, what was the other one, 36 lugim, right, or something like that. But rather, it was only 3 lugim of Maim Shuvim, which can possibly make mikvah. Right. Now that's actually much less. Much less. Right? What do we say a lug is? Six eggs? How much is 6 eggs? What's an egg? I don't know.
It's probably a small egg.
Small eggs, not the big eggs?
No, because those eggs I don't think I have.
Partridge eggs? You're
no.
Slav. You're quail eggs.
No, not quail. It would have been a smaller egg.
A tablespoon, maybe.
No, an egg is like...
I don't know. But it is, the rule is you got to get the mikvah dry. I mean, it's not microscopically dry, but you have to have a dry mikvah to start again. Okay, so
then you got to wait until you can collect from the 40 saw, right?
You got to wait to collect 40 saw, and you have to, and then however you do it, correct?
Which may take quite a bit of time if you're in the summer, for example.
Yes, yeah, or may take even more time if you're in the winter. This summer's been fairly rainy. The winter here is just snow.
I'm talking about Eretz Yisrael, right? There's no summer rain.
Correct. Right. Okay, that's correct. Right.
No summer rain at all. So who knows how long it will take?
That's true.
This is an amazing thing. I mean,
I agree.
Especially if they decided halacha, because there were a lot of mikvaot in Israel, right? I mean, so everybody had to go by what these 2 guys said forever, presumably.
So there's an article I once read about the mikveh in St. John's, Moncton, maybe I don't remember one of these places where they had a leak. And the Rav was away and he came back and he met the caretaker, and the caretaker said he had to keep filling up the mikveh.
Because it was leaking.
Well, it was leaking, whatever it was going down. So that's a problem. That's a very real problem. So he had to go figure out how to go fill this up. And whatever it was, I'm trying to remember, it was in winter.
Ice blocks.
So there are no ice blocks anymore. There are no ice blocks. See, back in the day, the Iceman used to cut the chips, the ice out of them. They don't do that. You can't order it. He tried. They couldn't order ice. Nobody did it. This is like within the last 10 years, 20 years. Okay. So it's gone. So he ended up, I'm trying to remember, they ended up using snow and melting it. And he had someone come to help him and everything, but it took a while. But he couldn't wait until the spring. People need the mikvah. This was the middle of winter.
Can you carry snow?
I guess as long as you don't carry it into a kli. And he had some kind of, I'm trying to remember now the article, whether it was some kind of lattice work, so it really wasn't considered clear or something. There were all kinds of things that they had, but he had someone who came in with a blow dryer, and to help. First of all, they had to seal this thing.
Right, of course.
Sealing a pool, you have to use all kinds of materials that just are horrible to use indoors, just from the fumes. So they had to seal this thing. Then they had to bring the snow in and start to melt it with a hand dryer. It took quite a while. So finally, I got it done. But they got it done. So first he thought about just bringing a little bit of snow in and waiting for it to melt. Now you have to remember, snow of course is not that dense.
No.
Right.
It took a long time.
It took a long time. So they helped it along with blow dryers, and they had it moving, and whatever it was. Sipur. Did I ever tell you about this? I'll try to see if I can find the article, maybe send it around. Okay, it's an interesting article. It's a real true story. And this is a little town which doesn't have a whole lot of finances to suddenly start building a new mikvah.
What town is this again? Where?
I thought it was Moncton.
Moncton?
Somewhere there.
Somewhere there. It's not Halifax. Halifax would have been too big. It was like Moncton. Moncton or maybe St. John's. It may have been St. John's. Maybe it was St. John's. Maybe it was St. John's.
Yes.
Okay, maybe St. John.
That's why I landed like
Okay. Okay. All right. So whatever it is, you know what? I'll send you the article. You'll remember it, and I'll remember it. Okay. So at any rate, so it's 3 lugim of water which will pass the mikvah. This is what the two weavers said. Vikima chachamis divrayim. The chachamim agreed to that, and that's therefore number 2. So the key to this is this was a machlokas between Hillel and Shammai. Not Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, Hillel and Shammai, and and it's not important whether we paskin like Hillel or paskin like Shammai or paskin like the Chachamim or like the weavers, whatever it was. This is number 2.
Right.
Now, number 3, v'idach. Okay, and the third case is as follows. Okay, what happens if a woman finds out that she sees dam, and she's a nida or zava? How far back do we have to say that she was tamei? All right? In other words, it could have been the dam was there and she didn't see it.
Right.
Could have been an hour ago. Could have been a day ago.
Yeah.
Right? Could have been when she went to the mikvah. It's like saying, what happens when you find the butcher's treif? How much meat do you have to throw out?
Well,
What happens?
Yeah, but it's an endless question. How far do you want to go back? It's endless.
There's no
Okay, so the answer usually is it's not
By the time you
endless.
find it.
It's actually you kind of figure out how much you think the stock would have been there, and you go back that far.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and sometimes you can actually delineate to which kinds of meat were found treif, right? So,
Okay.
but you're right, it's complicated. It's complicated by the fact that it's not just the meat. The meat is already eaten unless it's in the freezer. The meat that's free in the freezer you bring back. The meat that's in the kalim, all kinds of utensils, right? When I was in Chicago many years ago, Shalat was a major distributor, and they found that they were distributing treif meat. Mr. Shalat had another warehouse of non-kosher meat, and at night they were flipping labels. This is the old thing they do, right? You don't have to be so smart to figure this out. Well, I'll tell you what happened.
I'm joking.
The
chickens were clean.
No, it wasn't even chicken. It was meat. It was cutlets. They ended up finding it was cutlets and other things. But they found there was a whistleblower. There was a Jew who was not from, okay, who couldn't live with this.
It bothered him.
An arbiter, a worker.
Sure.
And we went to the Rabbanim and he told them, right? And they how did they find this out? They actually got involved with the Attorney General of the state of Illinois. They took them some of the meat and they had to test it for salt content. Okay, and when it came back as 0.00000, right? They knew that it was not koshered, right? So and this was already prepared meat. So it wasn't like there was a lot like fresh chicken. You could say, well, it was going to be kosher, didn't have a chance kosher. This was like chicken cutlets. So that's what they got the guy on. Anyways. So, I mean, Rav Gedaliah Schwartz and the other one had to go back and say how far back do you have to go? How much chicken cutlets in your dishes and so forth do you have to look at? All right.
What does Shammai actually say?
So here we go. So this is Shammai says Kol Anoshim Dayan Shatam. It's enough, like Dayenu Shatam. When they see that they're tamei, they see dam. That any tumor, any object they touch from that point is going to become tamei. This is not whether she's a nida. She's clearly a nida now.
Right.
But if she's a nida, and this is the part of nida that we don't really focus on, that she's tamei. There's a sense of tumor. And therefore, it's like, and it may be a zaba, but depending on what time of month the flow takes place. So from that point on, she sees the flow. She had 320. At that point, 320, everything she touches, 321, 322, 323 is tamei. But you don't have to say 319, 318, 317. Dayan Shat. It's genik. A nik from that point, from the shah to the time they see it. Hillel Omer, mipkida lepkida. From Pekida means to check. Vashem Pakad es Avram. Right? Pakod Pakad Yeschem. Pakad means to remember, to check, to be recalled. The last time that she was remembered to check, that she checked herself, right? That would be the time when, she saw that she was clean. So that would be, after that point, until she found that she was in the Ida, you have to assume that everything is going to be Tameh. That's a radical opinion.
To say the least.
Right? That's the polar opposite of Shammai. Right?
Exactly.
V'afilo liyamim harbe, and they underscored, and even for many days. She went to the mikveh, whatever it was, Thursday night, and then she sees dam next Wednesday. So anything that she could have touched from Thursday to Wednesday could be. That's an amazing kind of thing. Right? The Chachamim Omrim, once again the Chachamim step in here, lo k'divrei zeh v'lo k'divrei zeh. Okay, this is once again the mediators. Ela me'es le'es. Es le'es is 24 hours. Okay, so notice on 24 hours before, you are lakula for both of the following things, either 24 hours
Or when she
last checked.
Whichever is shorter.
Whichever is shorter. So therefore, it's either 24 hours, except if it was checked mipkida l'pkida, or mipkida m'mayde de meis leis, or from checking to checking, which can't be longer. She checked, let's say, 48 hours before. It can't be longer than 24 hours.
Right.
That's what it means. V'suleka. I'm sorry, meis leis. Period. So that's the third machlokus between Hillel and Shammai. Okay, so the point of all of this so far is simply to tell us that we can't say, we try to include that Shammai was involved, when Hillel and Shammai were involved in making the Gzeira about Yodayim, and it really wasn't Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, and that's what we tried to kind of move the time period earlier. We can't say that's true because we know that only Hillel and Shammai only argued about three things, and that was the quote of Rav Huna, and now we explain what those three things are. Okay, so this really is completely off the track of the 18th object, the 18th machloksim, except to say that Hillel and Shammai only had three of the machloksim. Now the Gemara says, wait, there's more, there's others. There's another machloksim. There's another machloksim, very famous machlokus. In fact, we had it in Masechet Chagiga. Right, lismoch and shlo lismoch. There's the earliest machlokus is found in Masechet. One of the earliest machlokusim found in Masechet Edios. It goes all the way back through the Zugos to a very early period. Whether if you bring a carbon and it's a carbon that does not have to be brought on. It's not a communal sacrifice, it's a personal sacrifice. If you have to put your hands actually on the animal, or you don't, on Yontif, okay, on Yontif. If you can do it on Yontif or not. So the machlokas really is not about communal sacrifices that I think either don't have to be done or done on Yontif. It's not about bringing the dove and the davos, because those can actually be brought any time that you want. You come on Yontif, so bring it before Yontif starts, or bring it after Yontif is over. It's really about two specific karbanos, and that's when we learned Chagi was about the karban Chagiga, the Shalmei Chagiga, and the Olas Riyah. These were sacrifices that you had to bring. Yeshua had to bring in Olas Riyah, but they were individual sacrifices. So, do you put your hands on Yontif, or do you not put your hands on Yontif, or do you do it after Yontif itself because you couldn't touch the animal on Yontif? So Hillel Omar lismoch, v'Shammai Omar shlo lismoch. That's the machlokus between Hillel and Shammai, and that's one of the listing of the groupings of the pairs who argue about lismoch and shlo lismoch. So the Gemara says, wait, Hillel and Shammai argued about this as well. You told me there's only three. Here's number 4. So the Gemara says, how come Rav Huna said there's only 3? There should be 4. So the Gemara says, Kikam Rav Huna, hechad lek the plukta dervusa badayu. So Rav Huna means there are only 3 machloksim where exclusively Hillel and Shammai argued. The Rabbanan, you guys say, well, the Rabbanan came to kind of, as you said, they mediated. They were like a later party who came to find what the Psak Halacha is. But the machlokas about lismoch and shlo lismoch is really goes back all the way back generation after generation. That's not really machlokas Hillel and Shammai. That's a machloksim that all existed in every time, except Hillel and Shammai were the leaders of that generation, so they also argued about it. So therefore, that's not included. The Gemara says, well, there's one more. Okay, this is where a person is taking grapes out to put them into the wine press. Okay, now if fruit is touched by liquids, and we talk about water, but it's other liquids as well, including certain fruit liquids, they become mukshel kabel tuma, provided that the owner knows about it and he really wants it to happen. Now, if this water would be destructive, or this liquid would be destructive, or he really doesn't want it, so that may not be considered, that would not be mukshel kabel tuma. It has to be good water, it has to be positive, he has to know about it as well. So he's taking these grapes and putting them into the grape press, right, the wine press, and what happens is some of the liquid, of the grape liquid or the grape juice, kind of comes out of some of the grapes and sprinkles on the grapes themselves. So does the owner really want this or not? So that's actually a machlokas, a Hillel and Shammai, okay? So on the other hand, you could say he doesn't want it because he'd rather the grape juice stay within the liquids, because otherwise it's going to actually, when he puts it into the press, it's going to run off the press before he even gets a chance to squeeze the grapes, so it's going to be lost. On the other hand, maybe he's going to collect into some kind of airtight mechanism that will keep the water, keep the liquid. So that's the machlokas. Would this be machshir l'kabel tuma or not? That's another one. That would be number 4 or number 5. So the Gemara says, "V'ika Hillel." I'm sorry, "V'ika habotzer lagat Shammai omer hochshar v'Hillel omer lo hochshar." So that should be another machlokas of Hillel and Shammai. So the Gemara says, "Bar minei dahi." No, that is excluded, except that one. Why the hasam kashasik le Hillel Shammai? Because there apparently Hillel heard what Shammai said and he had nothing to respond. So Shammai says it is hochshar. Right, even though this is going to go. I know what it is. He takes the grapes out of the vine. He puts them into a basket. Right, and the basket he's taking the basket will go into the gat.
Okay.
So when he takes the grapes off the vine and he puts them into this basket, some of the juice comes out.
Okay.
So ostensibly the juice would come through the basket.
Yes.
So Shammai says it's mukshel l'kabel tuma because it's possible that maybe this time he's got a basket that's got slats in it, right? It's made of reeds and wicker, but maybe the next time he's going to use a basket that has much more solid, will retain the liquid. And if the liquid is retained, once it goes into the press, it'll be caught when it begins to ferment. So that's why Hillel says it is going to be mukshel l'kabel tuma. So apparently, mukshar prepared, ready.
You know what I'm saying? Hillel says lo mukshar.
Hillel lo mukshar. So the Gemara. So Rashi says that if you look in the Gemara Daf Yud Zayin, that happens when actually Hillel agreed with Shammai. Hillel had nothing to say. He was kafuf. This happened maybe the day that Hillel agreed to what Shammai said, and therefore
It didn't really have the machlokas.
it didn't have a machlokas. And the machlokas itself, he acceded to Shammai and he withdrew his position.
Right.
So that's not really a machlokas. That was a
Once they
discussion.
agree,
Once
they
they
agree.
right, either they
It
agree.
began with the opinion.
Most machlokas, A says yes and B says no, and then the Gemara has to make a decision. A chacham make a decision. Someone else makes the decision.
Exactly.
In this case, Hillel withdrew his opinion. So therefore, that is withdrawn, and therefore we ended up at the end having only 3 machlokasim of Hillel and Shammai. Okay, good. Next piece. Moving ahead. Okay, we're going to talk now about Tumah of Eretz Ha'amim. Okay, 2 things. I'll just read the quote from the Brisa. This was a Brisa once again that was quoted. We learned it a few weeks ago in Yudal Ramad Bet that Yossi ben Yoezer ish Shreda of Yossi ben Yochanan ish Yerushalayim. They made a gzeira on Tumas Haaretz Ha'amim v'al klei zchuchis. They made 2 gzeiros, and now the Gemara, which once again is not part of our 18 things, but is simply a machlokas that the Gemara wants to understand what exactly the gzeira and takana was and what exactly was the machlokas really based upon. So it takes some time to discuss this, which is really, I guess, a far field from what we have. Let's break it for a minute. Okay.
Too much.
All right, I want to talk about that. Okay. So in Pirkei Avos, just to go back to who these people are, so just to understand where they are historically, right? Everybody knows Pirkei Avos. The first mission of Pirkei Avos, Moshe Kibbutz Torah Sinai. Gave it to Yoshua to the Zikanim, Zikanim to Nevi'im. Nevi'im gave it to Anshe Knesset Gdola. This is ostensibly the beginning of the second temple. The precursor of the Sanhedrin probably. And they say 3 things. Then you have Shimon Atzah. Anshe Knesset Gdola may lead to the Sanhedrin. They're the high court. Okay.
Second bias
Not important.
until
The beginning of the second temple, okay, or it's the end of the destruction. We can talk about it later, okay?
No,
Talk about the
that
year
piece
5,
comes from Sanhedrin
minus
or somewhere.
5.
This piece comes from Sanhedrin.
So
This actually comes
the
from
first
Pirkei
piece,
Avos.
this piece doesn't come from Pirkei. I mean, everybody puts in
No,
Pirkei.
Kol Yisrael Yesh Lam Chelik Lo Baz that comes from
Oh, so I
Sanhedrin.
mixed up.
Okay, right. But the first mission is from Pirkei Avos, okay?
Sorry.
So just it's the chronology here.
Yes.
So you give it the Anshe Knesset Gdola. Then after Anshe Knesset Gdola says 3 things. Have Misum Edim Hamid Avtemi Harba Susi Alektori. You have Shimon Atzadik. He's the leftover. He's a Shiori Knesset Gdola. After him, you have Antignos Ish Socho. Gets him Shimon Atzadik. Then after Antignos Ish Socho, in Mishnah Dalet, you have Yossi ben Yoezer Ish Shreda of Yossi ben Yochanan Yerushalayim. They're the next. Then you have Yoshua ben Prachev and Ita Abeli. Then you have Yehuda ben Tabai and Shimon ben Shetach. Then after that you have Shmaya v'Avtalion, and after Shmaya v'Avtalion you have Hillel v'Shammai. Okay, and then you go into Rabban Gamliel. So you have these two guys. You'll see this is important just to keep the general chronology here. Yossi ben Yoezer are the first of the Zugos. Before them is Antigno Shisoch, who is one guy. Then you have the two of them, the two Yossi ben Yoezer and Yossi ben Yochanan. That following them you have Yoshua ben Prach and Nita Abeli. Following them you have Yehuda ben Taba and Shimon ben Shetach. Following them you have Shmaya v'Avtalion, and following them you have Hillel and Shammai. Okay, so you've got 5 pairs. Hillel and Shammai is pair number 5. The two Yossis are pair number 1. Okay, and you'll see that because it gives you a sense of when the chronology is. Before, yeah. Right? We can actually begin to kind of know exactly when these people are. But you'll see the Gemara has some kind of rough chronology on their own that you want to put in. So these two guys, Yossi ben Yoezer Yisrael, and Yossi ben Yochanan Yishushalayim, they have made 2 Gzeiros. They said that Eretz Ha'amim is going to be Tameh. Now, what does that really mean?
What does that mean?
Okay, what's Eretz Ha'amim?
I don't know.
Where we live. You and I. Foreign countries outside of Eretz Yisrael. Okay? So, no, it's a Gzeira that it's Tumah. The question is what the Gzeira really is based upon. Why should it mean that suddenly you say, well, Israel is much holier? It is much holier. Living in diaspora is unholy. This makes unpurified.
One thing to not be as holy, it's another thing to be Tameh.
Correct. So the answer is that the concern was that where the Jews did not settle, even the Jews settled later on, that this was an area that people were not that careful about where they buried people. So there was always a concern that a person could become Tameh in one form or another easier in Eretz Ha'amim than in Eretz Yisrael.
People there, since you brought up the chronology, people had, at least since...
Canaanites lived in Israel.
No, at least since Bavel. Right? At least since the Churban of the first Bayit, Jews who lived outside the country from then on, period.
Okay, but before that point they didn't.
Let's say, right. So,
okay.
but these people...
Right, so the number of things you can ask. You can say, well, Bavel has a community all the way back into antiquity. It's not really true. You could also say, well, where the Canaanites lived in Israel before the Jews came. Then when we're always finding Canaanite settlements even today, or the archaeological discoveries.
I'm willing to go with them and say, no Jews lived outside until Bavel, okay? But then, from then until these two guys and afterwards, the Jews were always, we know not everybody came back from Bavel by any means.
Okay, but I'm saying I'm just
saying to make a statement like they did.
That's the Gzeira.
Yeah, Gzeira.
That's the Gzeira. So the Gzeira. So that's a Gzeira to say that therefore it's a rabbinic form of Tumah. It's not a biblical form of Tumah. It's a rabbinic extension to say that there's some form of Tumas Eretz Ha'amim. Okay, which means, by the way, what does that actually mean?
That's what it means.
Does that mean, therefore, that if I bring fruit in, right?
Yes.
If I bring in fruit or an object from Eretz Ha'amim, what about if I am in Eretz Ha'amim? Yeah. What about if I'm in a stagecoach and I'm traveling through Eretz Ha'amim? What if I'm on a horse? I never stepped foot on Eretz Ha'amim. So therefore, there's enough space between whatever tumah could be that I'm above that. So that you'll see from this Gemara that there were 2 or 3 different steps when they actually made how the Gzeira actually took place.
Yeah, but this thing, if you live outside, like in Bavel, and you make a bracha over wine or something, that's a bracha on Tameh food or Tameh wine. Anyway.
Yeah, it means it's Tameh.
I'm saying people must have done this every
There's nothing wrong with making a bracha on Tameh wine.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with being Tameh. There's nothing wrong with being Tameh as long as you don't go to Beis Hamikdash.
That's the case, that's not a problem.
All right? Right?
That's not a problem, because I would assume everybody who came in from anywhere...
The question, by the way, that comes up is, you're going to snicker when you say this, who's a Kohen here? Any Kohanim? Can a Kohen... Good. Can a Kohen leave Eretz Yisrael to go to the diaspora? Right? Kohanim are still musharim ala tumah. Kohen doesn't go to a cemetery today.
There's halacha sheet last time.
Yeah, it's in there somewhere, right? Okay.
Where?
So, but it's very complicated. So, in other words, can a Kohen leave Eretz Yisrael? So the heter, he's got to get married, he's got to do this, got to do that. I'm not sure. I don't know that people actually sit and think about this. Surely, now once you've been in Eretz Ha'amim, once you've been here, any Kohanim who are here are already Tameh. So there's no reason, there's no requirement to leave immediately to go to Israel. Like you already got the tumah. You can't get rid of it.
Is it different tumah chutz la'aretz? Is that what you're saying?
This is the tumah of chutz la'aretz. The question: what the tumah of chutz
What does it really
mean?
mean?
What does the tumah
Well,
actually mean? So there are two things about this, and you'll see the Gemara is going to talk about this. I know once again this sounds so far-fetched because for our concept of tumah has really been reduced to nida and to a cemetery. It's the only tumah that we even think about, right? And washing hands, netilas yadayim, which is a reminder of that. So there are two things here. One is a piece of afar, piece of dirt, right? Piece of dirt of chutz la'aretz. If that comes into Eretz Yisrael, will that make anything? Is not that dirt tameh? It's like wipe your feet at the door. And the second thing, what about the air itself? What do you mean the air? The air goes back and forth. But if you are in Eretz Amim, you are in Chutz La'aretz, the fact that you may be above something else, or you may have come into contact with something, or just being there, even if you never touch the ground, right? Does that make you considered Tameh or not? Those are the two different levels we're going to talk about. But this whole thing, once again, is a little bit far-fetched, but the reason it comes up is because we had given them we'll see that there were different stages in which it took place. The fascinating thing about this Gemara may not be so much the Tumah, but you see the levels of 3 times where this Gezerah was recreated or added to as you move from era to era. So one is the Tumah of Eretz Amim. The second Gezerah, which we're probably not going to get to today, but maybe we'll start, is about Zechuchis. What's Zechuchis? Glass. So what's the Tumah? What's the Tumah for Zechuchis? So that normally Zechuchis is going to be treated both like metal and also is going to be treated like cheres. Right? You'll see it has a little bit of one or the other. Why? Because it's made of chol, it's made of dirt, right? It's made of dirt. It's the silica from the sand is processed and taken out to make the glass. And at the same time, it's you cannot rebuild clay pottery, but you can remelt metals and glass, right? So it looks a little bit like one. So because it is, even though it doesn't seem to be that the Torah talks about it, right? It does make certain equivalencies in terms of how we treat it. So this was the Gezerah that they made. So they're going to do with one more at a time.
First, this feed into the machlokas about whether Bisman Hazeh glass absorbs, because there are different opinions.
So I'm not sure if it really applies to it because this is more about Tumah. The glass absorbing or not absorbing has to do with the fact that it's smooth. And so there's a sense, and this is really where science and halacha are very difficult to integrate, that when you put something non-kosher into a pot, a metal pot, what happens? Why does the pot become non-kosher?
Goes through the hole.
What goes through the holes?
It's assumed that whatever it is,
It's assumed the tam, right? The tam is something that's very hard to pinpoint. It's not about matter, right? You can't quantify it, right? But it's assumed that the tam would be something that would be absorbed somehow into the utensil. Now, we accept that it is. It's hard to quantify that in matters that make sense scientifically.
Yeah.
Though I'm told that if you were to do some very sensitive tests, that you could find there's a difference between a pot that's been used and different types of material. The idea of certain things certain space-age materials that don't absorb at all. So that's part of where the glass thing. That's where the glass thing comes. The other part about the fact of the glass is glass. We don't really have a tradition. We don't have a tradition about knowing when they come from Midjan what they did with kalim. They talk about the metal and they talk about cheres. And the third thing is you really couldn't use the glass in those days very hot, right? So the idea of heat was it would crack.
No, I'm saying absolutely.
Right. Pyrex is definitely different than regular glass because Pyrex has metal built into it to give it the strength and resilience. So the cooking glasses we have are surely not the halacha about glasses.
The timing is interesting because good glass, the Romans had glass, right, at this time in these worlds, but it was a very...
But you couldn't use it for hot, correct?
Absolutely, and people didn't use it in any large amount.
Phoenicians developed glass.
Pyrex and similar material cannot be cut.
I didn't say that. I say you look up the koshering books, but it's not treated like glass.
Right.
It's not treated like glass.
I think Am I not right?
You can't, right? You can't.
It cannot?
I think it cannot.
Yeah.
Correct?
Because it's neither nor.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's
It's
not
one,
glass,
right.
and it's not-
By the way, so the idea of kashering glass and using glass really comes up primarily in Europe, right? Developed in Europe where glass was very expensive and people didn't have a whole lot of utensils to begin with, and it goes for Pesach. That's why people, even if they didn't kosher things they normally kosher, like you would think of koshering, because they had enough glass, they would tend to kosher by you put it in the water for once a day, 3 days in a row, and so forth. This was the way to kind of dilute whatever Tom was not absorbed or was absorbed because it was so smooth. But that's really what comes from. So I think it's a different type of Hagdara than it is for Tuma. Anyways, so the bottom line is, we're going to leave glass on the side for now. Let's talk about the idea of this Tuma V'Eretz Amim. So right now we've said who made this Gzeira. Yossi ben Yoezer and Yossi ben Yochanan, who we said is the first of the Zugos, came after Shimon HaTzadik and Antignos Ish Socho. The next generation is these two Yossis. So the Gemara says, wait, they made the Gzeira? Everybody with me? V'harabbanan the Shmonim Shana Gazer. The rabbis, the Beis Din, 80 years before Churban Abayis, made a Gzeira about Eretz Amim. Okay? Let's keep...
These people lived way before the
That's correct. So that's the question. How could you say they made the Gzeira when we find a reference, as we're about to read this brisa that comes from Avodah Zarah, Rav Kahana is actually a Memra, who talks about the son of Rabbi Yossi, a Sandler, the Amrav Huna, the Amrav Kahana, Kishachol Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi, Sholchulo. When Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Yossi got sick, they said, tell us, Rebbe, Emor Lanu Shneu Gimel Bezel Gimel Dvarim Shalmart Mishum Avicha. 2 or 3 things that you heard from your father. Right? So Yishmael Rabbi Yossi is already after the time of Churban Abayis, I believe. Correct? I believe this is the Rabbi Yossi of the Mishnayos.
And he used to live in Sipora, apparently.
Right, so this is what time? They give a year there?
We're sure it's Rabbi Yossi, yeah?
Okay. So I believe it's the Rabbi Yossi who we know from Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rav Nachman, Rav Nechemya, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda. I think so. Okay, maybe not.
He lived 80 years before the disruption, before the Korban.
Well, then it's not the same guy. He lived 80 years. Okay, so Rabbi Yossi lived 80 years, so it's a different Rabbi Yossi. So this is Rabbi Shmuel's son.
Right.
So they said to him, tell us a couple of things that your father said. That your father told you. So Sholach Lamisem Kachomar Abba. This is what my father said. Kuf Pei Shana. There's 180 years. Achlocharav Habayis Pashta Machos Rishal Yisrael. 180 years before Churban Abayis, the Roman Empire began to push down on Israel. Now I'm not sure exactly on that chronology. What's 180 years before the Churban Abayis? Is minus 110. Okay.
I'm saying they could have started, but
the Romans actually take over. The Romans
63, minus
right
63.
minus 63, and we said there's 110. So they're pushing in. The empire is beginning to have some kind of pressure upon the system, and eventually they build up so much that they turn to the Romans to decide who should be the next leader, and the Romans said we're the leader. Okay. So there's 180 years before Churban Abayis. Already the Romans are starting to kind of have an impact. Peishana, Achlachar Abayis, 80 years before that. So this is about minus 10.
Right.
Okay, right before the Common Era. Gazru Tuma al Eretz Amim val Klizuchuchis. So in minus 10, they made the Gzeira, the Gzeira that you thought was made by who?
Way back when.
Yossi and Yosi, right?
Right.
Was made minus 10 BCE.
Right.
Mem Shana Achlachar Abayis, Galsala Sanhedrin V'Yashla B'Chaniyos. 40 years before Churban Abayis, was by the year 30 in the Common Era. So the Sanhedrin moves out of its real permanent place, which is called Lishkat Hagazit, and they move to a different area of the Beis Hamikdash called Chaniyot. Chaniyot are stores. Maybe storehouses. They took over a different room. Why did they want to move there? Because they were unable to deal with all the capital cases, the chaos and the conflicts that were going on at that point in the years reaching up to Churban Abayis were so much that they were unable to get together and unable to enforce capital laws, capital punishment. So the rule is they're no longer really a Sanhedrin. They're considered just like a regular Beis Din. So these capital cases, they could not deal with at all. No, they couldn't impose capital punishment. They could deal with the case, but they couldn't impose capital punishment. I shouldn't say they didn't deal with capital case. They couldn't impose capital punishment. And probably the Romans didn't let them impose capital punishment. So therefore, the way for them to do it was say, we're going to not meet officially in our normal chambers. We'll meet some in a different part of the temple, which is not the official Sanhedrin chambers. We're going to be the pseudo based in and placed at a Sanhedrin. So they were able to consciously not enforce and execute people for capital crimes.
Which they weren't going to do anyway.
Well, they had to meet because they had to run. They had to be a judicial system. They still need to have a judicial system. Things are becoming very chaotic, right? As you reach the last 40 years before Churban Habayis, you got procreators, you have Kohanim Gedolim who are corrupt, you have Romans who are pushing and demanding taxes, you have conflicts that are taking place.
And all these different sects.
And all these different groups are running at each other, correct. And then besides all the religious sects, you've got your peace movement, you've got your right-wingers, your warriors.
And the Yeshu group too.
Right, well, yeah, and correct, you have them said they're one of the sects. Correct. So at any rate, this is a historical statement that the Rav Shmuel is telling over from Rabbi Yossi's father. 40 years before the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the Sanhedrin was exiled, v'yashvala b'chanuyot. And they sat in this place called the Chanuyot, the stores, so to speak. So who cares? Like, why is that important? That's exactly what we're asking here. Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi Lomar Shlodanu Dinei Knasos. They didn't judge laws about giving what'd you say? Fines, right? Fines. So the Gemara says, Dinei Knasos so kedaitach? You mean they didn't give fines? Of course they gave fines. So Ela Ema Shlodanu Dinei Nefashos. They didn't judge capital cases. They couldn't really bring across capital punishment in these kind of cases. Okay, so what do we know about this? So this is 40 years before Churban Habayis. 80 years before Churban Habayis, we're told that the Sanhedrin came up with, or the rabbis came up with the law about Ertum Eretz Amim and Kli Zchuchis. So Bechit, and as opposed to Yossi ben Yoez and Yossi ben Yochanan, Bechit Tema Befei Shana Nami Inu Havin. Maybe you'll tell me that Yossi and Yossi lived the same time. When it says the rabbis made the rule 80 years before Churban Habayis, this is the same guys. V'Yatanya, Hillel, V'Shimon Gamliel, V'Shimon Nohagu Nisiyasam Lefnei Habayis Me'er Shana. The Hillel and the following people who followed him, they were Nasiim 100 years before. So in other words, we know that Hillel, they're giving us the chronology, the famous Hillel lives 100 years before Churban Habayis. And we said, looking in Pirkei Avos, that Hillel is of the 5 pairs, he's number 5. And Yossi is number 1. So several generations. It's 4 generations before. However long a generation is. 20 years, 40 years. Okay, but in other words, Hillel is 100 years before. And V'ilu Yossi ben Yoezer is straight of Yossi ben Yochanan have a kadmei tuve. They must have been, but they were much before. So therefore, how could you say that this is 80 years before? Yossi and Yossi look like they're 280 years before, so to speak, right? Ella, so comes along the Gemara and says, well, here's what we're going to tell you what the Gzeira was. Ella asu inhu gazera gusha lisrof. The first Gzeira that Yossi and Yossi made was if you have a piece of dirt, of earth, and it touches truma, so then this truma is lisrof, will be burnt. Because truma that becomes tameh, you've got to burn it. So in other words, that's really the practical thing about it. They made that rule about gush, about a piece of dirt. Gazer agusha lisrof. The avira v'lo klum. But they didn't make anything about that if the truma went outside of Israel and crossed the border outside of Israel and ended up traveling in Chutz La'aretz, that the truma would be tameh that way. The gzeira of Yossi and Yossi was what? Just about if truma touches a clod of earth, for foreign earth. Not if the truma travels outside of Israel. V'yasser Rabbanan the Peishana Gazer Avirad Litlos, and came along the rabbis to say, well, we're going to add to that 80 years before the temple was destroyed, that if the truma touches a clod of earth, it gets burnt. If the truma travels outside of Israel in the air, so then you can't eat the truma, but you don't burn it. Litlos means you just keep it. We're not going to let you burn it because we don't know really it's a gezeira. It's a very far-fetched gezeira. But it's a, we're going to make this rule that it's you simply toll it, you hold on to the truma until it rots. Okay, moving along, because we're trying to finish this Gemara before we get hit by the bell. Okay, so the Gemara says, so the Gemara says, you mean there's one gzera they only made for sreifa? Only they made it, Yossi and Yossi made the rule about burning the with the truma touched by the clod of earth. V'amar ilfa. Ilfa, who was the name of a Tana, said, or Namora said, Yodayim tchila gzerasim l'sreifa, that he made a statement about Yodayim. There was one gzera about Yodayim. If Yodayim touched the truma, then the truma is burnt. Yodayim, who the tchila gzerasim l'sreifa, that only there was a gzera for Yodayim was the initial gzera was to burn. Hamid achrin elo. But nothing else was ever made when they made a gzera to burn it initially. The first gzera was to hold on to it. Litlos. And you just told me that 80 years, that Yossi and Yossi made a gzera, that if the truma touches a clod of dirt, it's going to be burnt. If it touches the air, nothing happens to it. The Rabbanan came years later, 80 years before Churban Abayis. They said, no, if it touches the air, you hold on to it. But the first gzera for the clod was to burn it. So, but we really think that no other gzera was ever made to burn initially. Ella. So now the Gemara says, and I'll tell you what the gzera was. Asu inhu gazer agushat litlos v'avira v'lo klum. Really, Yossi and Yossi made the following gzera. Ready for this? If truma touches a clod of diaspora dirt, you can't burn it, but you can't eat it. You have to hold on to it. If it goes into the air,
Nothing.
it's zero. It's truma tahora. V'yas rabbanan the peishana, and then the rabbis of 80 years before the Churban Abayis, what did they come along to say? Gazer agusha lisro v'avir litlos. They came along to say no, that we're going to bump it up one step. If the truma touches a clod, you got to be burnt.
Right.
If it touches the air, you got to hold on to it. Okay, so therefore we have a two-stage gzera.
Right.
First gzera was by the Yossi and Yossi,
Right.
which was simply about the gush. If it touches the clod, it's tola, it's tamei, but you don't burn it. Avir is nothing. The Chachamim came along 80 years before the Churban and bumped everyone up. If it touches the guf, you burn it. The gush, you burn it. If it touches the avir, you simply hold on to it. So far, so good. 2-level gzera.
Absolutely.
Okay, but we're not finished. V'yakati, says the Gemara, we weren't at 2 levels. There's another time that it happened. V'yakati bi Usha gazer. It happened in Usha when the Sanhedrin met in Usha. This is after Churban Abayis.
Right.
When the Sanhedrin of Rav Yochanan and Zakkai and his subsequently moves around into different places. And one of the places is Usha. The Tznan, that we found the following. Maybe we'll continue, guys. Okay, so we'll get to 2 dots. Everybody okay?
So they still got truma after the buy.
Yeah, that's my question.
So I guess
It couldn't be.
Yeah, no,
It couldn't be.
I don't know. I guess they
Maybe they
did.
still gave the Kohanim, they had to eat. How did they live?
I don't know. I guess
They were
the truma. I guess they tried
Well, there
to.
were still Kohanim.
I guess yeah. I guess if you didn't touch the mace, you didn't have to be touched. You didn't have to be purified by the paraduma.
But there was no more paradigm after the Churban.
So, but you could still become tahar
Still go
by
to
going
a
to the
mikveh. Go to
mikvah.
a
I think so. So certain forms of tumah could be carried out. I think so.
Sorry.
Avav sveikot sarfin asatuma. So this Mishnah, which it comes from Masechet Tahara, says there were 6 types of sveikos that you're going to burn the truma about. This is about not just what you do for the real tuma, a suffix. What are the suffix? We'll go through them quickly. Suffix Beit HaPeres. Suffix Beit HaPeres is you have a area you don't know there was a grave. There are 2 types of Beit HaPeres. One is you had a graveyard. It was dug up, so you never know where you're going. And otherwise you have a field that you know a grave is there, but you don't know where the grave is. So we say that Beis HaPeres is Rabbanan is one of these is Rabbanan, one of these is Doraisa Tameh. If it's a suffix Beis HaPeres, you may have been a grave there at one point. You don't really know. Maybe they dug under, maybe they furrowed up the graveyard. So that's a case. They made a gzeira that this truma is going to be burnt, if truma goes there. V'yasafek offer abam eretz amim, and if it's a question about if the clod of dirt comes from eretz amim, you're going to burn the truma up. That's what they're making the gzeira. V'yasafek big day amaretz. Big day amaretz we say were going to be tameh because they weren't careful about tum and tahara. There's a suffix whether the amaretz had touched anything. V'yasafek kelim and imtzayim, and the question whether kelim had actually had truma within them, but it's a suffix. Asafek harokim, the question about the spit, whether the spit came from a zav or not. The asafek mei ragle adam, shekeneged mei ragle behemon. You have urine, and you don't know if this urine is from a zav or the urine is from an animal, and you know that urine next to it is from an animal. These are the kinds of things you don't bump into, right? But you don't know if this urine, which you cannot determine, this is about people take the urine test today, they could determine it, is human urine or is animal urine. If it's animal urine, it's going to be tar. If it's human urine and it may come from a zav, it would be something that a zav had left and the emission a zav had done, it would be tameh. So all of these things, they made six gzeros, and there were 6 we just counted. Avada magan v'al safek tumasam, surfing says truma. When you have you surely touch them, but you're not sure if they're tummy or not, you burn the truma. Right. And Rabbi Yossi Omer, af al safek magam b'shus hayachid sarfin. Rabbi Yossi says, no, it's not just if you surely touch them, and the safek was a question. Maybe it's a safek even if you touch them as well. Safek magam in rishus hayachid, and chachamim omrim b'shus hayachid tolim b'shus harabim tahorim. In rishus hayachid, you hold on to the truma, you can't burn it. In rishus harabim, it's tahar. Okay, now this 6 items looks like it has nothing to do with anything except Ula comes along. Omar Ula Elu Vav Sveikot B'Usha Hitkinu. They made these rules in Usha. Now, the rule looks like it applies to Safek, but the Gemara understands that Safek is really, this is the first time that they were dealing with these objects. So therefore, you see, for some reason, the Gemara assumes that the Safek and the Vada is going to be the same thing, but that in Usha, they're dealing here as well with some kind of gzeira that has to deal with Tumas Eretz Amim.
Well, that's one of them.
What's one of them? So we said that we had 2 eras. We had the era of Yossi and Yossi.
Right.
That was the first level. Then we had a level 80 years before Churban Abayis, which they bumped it up one level. Right. Now there seems to be a 3rd level that's coming up, which is Nusha, which is after Churban Abayis. So what they did the same thing. They made it already. 80 years before Churban Abayis, they said that the stuff from Eretz Amim is tameh. So what did they add here? Right. So I said the part that's a little difficult. If you read this Mishnah, it looks like it's about Safek, right? But the Gemara seems to assume that Safek and Vada as well. So therefore, the Gemara comes now to the final conclusion. This is the conclusion. Okay, that there were 3 levels of how this gzeira was made. There was ad k'dei kach, they kept revisiting this and increasing the level of severity of the gzeira. So Ella, here it is. Level 1. Level 1 was Yossi and Yossi. Right. Asu inhu, these guys, Yossi and Yossi, gazer agusha litlos ve'avir v'lo klum. First level was if the truma touches the clod, it's just you can't burn it, you can't eat it. If it goes outside of Eretz Yisrael, it's fine, it's tar. Second level, asu rabbanim the shmonim shana, 80 years for Churban Abayis, gazer idi v'ida litlos. The second bump up level was if it goes outside of Eretz Yisrael, you also were told it. If it touches the clod, you can't eat it, you can't burn it, you hold on to it, and if it goes outside of Eretz Yisrael, you can't eat it, you can't burn it. That's what Tola means. That's level 2. The also Ba'usha, and they came along in Usha after Churban Abayis, and that's probably when it became more real to go into Eretz Amim. We're back and forth, people living closer up there in the Galil. And there was really chaos with the Romans down around Yerushalayim. Gazer Agusha Lisrof, the Avira the Koi Koi. The 3rd level is that for a clod of Eretz Yisrael, that the clod of Chutzlars, that the Truma touches, you burn the Truma. But the ear of Chutzlaretz, they didn't bump that up. That still remains Tola. So you've divided this now Gzeira into 3 levels. Now for us, this is all extremely difficult to really process, right? But the musar to me is how careful they were about truma, and more importantly that this was probably becoming more and more of a problem where Jews in Israel were forced to leave Eretz Yisrael. We know they had to leave sometimes to even do Ibur HaChodesh and Ibur Shana for the Beis Din to get together, because the Romans become increasingly pushing down pressure upon the Jewish community. You've got Churban Abayis, you've got Bar Kochva. They're trying to maintain their internal control, at least in some fashion. This is a tremendous revolution of what's going on in Judaism without a Churban, without the Beis Hamikdash. So you've got 1, 2, and 3, and therefore, the bottom line is, it starts with Yossi ben Yossi and Yossi, which is all the way back at the beginning of the temple times, let's say 250, 350 years before Churban Abayis, moves it up to 80 years before, and moves it up even to Ushua, which is after Churban Abayis.
So the last one is just leave it, don't eat it, and don't burn it, right?
Right, so the last level is, if it touches a clod, you burn it. If it goes into Chutz La'aretz, you leave it as it is. Okay? And that will take us up to, next time we meet, which we said is going to be
The 11th.
the 11th, right? Because I'm away for 2 weeks, my fault, me bad, and then it's Labor Day, and so we're going to Labor Day, okay? On Labor Day you don't labor, right? Even Torah is of course not labor's love, okay? And then we'll put us back onto the 11th. So I will just send out a reminder later this week to remind you we're not learning, and I'll try to send out the reminder when we get back to learn in a few weeks.
Absolutely.
But next time is really Klei Zchuchis, it's very interesting because it talks about the difference between Zchuchit and metal and earthenware.
Number 11.
Have a safe and enjoyable.
Thank you.
Beautiful